doing a sit-up. Keep the tailbone forward towards your heels. Now take the back lower rib cage near the waist, move it away from the pelvis and put it down. So you have to curl inward as you go down. And that puts the back ribs far away. Now when you lie down, the upper back has to extend. That last bit is the part that's a back bend. They go all the way down. The hands go down. Hands, just put your hands down in. So that lying down that way, you lengthen the lumbar out. You get the back of the lower rib cage right about here on the floor, and then that's stuck. This will not shorten. And then when you lie the rest of the way down, all these vertebrae one at a time have to go into some level of extension. Right? They have to back bend a little bit. And so Shavasana becomes a back bend for the upper back. And for someone who has a real kyphosis, it's more back bend than they can stand. They can't even do that back bend. Now, there's more to this because you see the chin is up a little bit, so her back bend is not complete. And there's a shoulder action. Now, I don't have time to get into this whole shoulder adjustment thing, but in order to get the shoulders to roll back, the upper back has to roll back. But now that she's got her upper back partly in position, I'm going to move your shoulder blades for you. So that's the shoulder position. Okay? Knees bent is fine for now. Straightening the knees is okay too, but either way. So I'm going to get the shoulder position, shoulder blade moves. That should be relatively independent of the upper back, but in this case, since we're trying to extend the upper back, if it extends the upper back more. Isn't that good? Now you see the chin is up? Okay, the chin up thing is the same thing as trying to tuck your chin in and move back. Remember how it felt on your middle back? So what we're going to do is, I'm going to lengthen the back of the neck, guide the chin down, move to the floor here, and then see how at the very end the chin is a little bit up, not very much. It's because it's on the sticky mat. This is a challenging pose, but it keeps the head in position. If I were to put a big thick blanket under there, lift up your head. It's more comfortable. This may be too much. I'm kind of
Yeah.
This is comfortable enough, but or even one blanket would be more comfortable.
More than enough.
That's too much. You also want the blanket right here. This is comfortable, but it actually reduces the sort of a structural effect of the pose.
Right.
So since we're about structure today, not about restorative yoga, we're going to try to get more structural here. We're going to keep her. Because you are actually able to get to the sticky mat, and the sticky mat provides that stickiness. If you were to stay here for 20 minutes, it would be too much. And actually, the chin is up too much, so I'm going to give you a spin blanket. Is it too much? Yeah. So you see when I pull here, I'm lengthening the spine, and it actually extends the thoracic, lifts the chest a little more. You see that? And that tilts the pelvis the right direction. So pulling on the back of the heads here. Really.
What's the curvature for spine doing? Is it pressing into the mat or no?
So the lower back is neutral.
Neutral.
And the upper back is the thoracic is instead of being in too much kyphosis, it's starting to get back to neutral.
Okay.
It feels really good.
And since the floor, the floor is a pretty straight line, so you can imagine this translating into standing up.
Right.
So if you were at the wall, her head would be just tiny bit off the wall, which actually is okay.
If I were to relax, it would be like.
If you were to relax the chin and come up with it.
Yeah.
But you see that Shavasana is a back therapy pose. Although for lower back, the straight legs can be a problem. But when you start lifting the legs, like if you put the legs up on a chair, which is that's a good position to know about lying with the legs up on a chair because it's, for a lot of people with back problems, that's the only comfortable position. Some sort of leg elevation. Okay. Not just bending the knees with the feet on the floor, but lifting the legs. It doesn't have to be as high as a chair. It could be on a stack of blankets or something. Lifting the legs is sort of the go-to safe position for a lot of people. Not a sideline. So it's good to know about that. But when you start bending the knees, the whole structural piece of the pose starts to get lost. So if we're trying to teach someone Tadasana, you teach them Shavasana, and they really have trouble with it, you teach them in Shavasana. And you do straighten the legs to the extent that you can because it stretches the hip flexors. If that's pulling them out of position, then you might have to support the knees a little bit. So if someone has a real acute problem, it's a whole different thing. Everything sets them off. You got to be very, very careful. But if someone's in a place where their backs are aches and so on, you can start working with the structural Shavasana. It's lengthening the spine, lengthening the upper back. And then that same movement, this is not so much for you, although I guess it might be okay for you. We're going to do this with you. I'm going to teach you to do a back bend over the blocks. But the idea is this. If your back tends to go this way, if we take it as far into a back bend as we can through that range of motion, the maximum back bend, then when you come back to neutral, it's easier. It stretches out the tissues in the front. You do it all the time, that's good. Now that's a passive back bend, which is different than a strengthening back bend, like standing poses and lifting the chest and a lot of other things we do, or active back bends, which have that benefit of strengthening those back muscles to help the kyphosis go away. But the passive ones stretch the tissues and you can stay in it a long time. They get the joints to move. Yes, you back bend all the time, but let me just see if you really back bend.